And I think the interesting thing with you, Mike, you joined the WACH Fox team. You joined the WACH Fox team as the weekend sports anchor in July of 2016. So you have seen the Will Muschamp era because, listen, that's, if not the biggest storyline, that is one of the biggest storylines going in this 2020 football season. It is Will Muschamp, his job status, what he needs to do to keep his job. Obviously, the pandemic affecting things, but that's one of the bigger storylines. So you've seen the Will Muschamp era from the beginning, which I think is really, really interesting. Just talk about, I guess, first off, your experience covering South Carolina, but overall, you know, I'm sure you were somewhat familiar with what Steve Spurrier did at South Carolina, the success he had, and overall just your take on the Will Muschamp era and then feeding into this year, I guess, the job he's done and what you think South Carolina as a program needs to see from him and this team in 2020, given all things are normal this 2020 season.
Well, I mean, it's a broken record, especially for an outsider. That, I mean, even though I've been here for 4 years, I mean, for an outsider to come in here and say it, but I mean, he was inheriting a team that needed rebuilding. We knew it was going to take some time, and I'm not saying that as an excuse for what's been happening these last couple of years, because, you know, you get to a point where you're getting some of these players who are capable of being able to do some good things, and it just hasn't panned out. It just hasn't panned out the way that we thought things were going to go, especially after year two. You go to the Outback Bowl, Jake Bentley plays out of his mind. You're thinking, okay, man, we have our quarterback. We have our quarterback. We have our team. We're losing some key pieces like Sky Moore on defense after that Outback Bowl. But at the same time, too, we should be able to take it to the next level. I know that injuries happen everywhere, but for whatever it is, and I don't know if it's the water down here in Columbia, but it's just been killing USC. And then not just for football. I mean,
yeah, basketball, too, is really bad.
I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is. So, I mean, you know, I've never really been a person to use excuses on injuries, because I think when you get to that point, you're kind of just it's I have injuries right here and I have blaming the refs right here.
Right.
You're kind of close to each other, but when it happens year after year after year, it's just like, you know, what is going on? You know, did Dabo Sweeney make a deal with the devil or something? Like, what's going on? Like, why is this continuing to happen with USC?
Right.
I truly believe, and this is from talking to people that are close with the program, talking to the players about it, because I remember I did a story on it last year. I can't remember what game it was. I mean, it was when the wheels were starting to fall off, that's for sure. I think maybe it was going into the Kentucky game. And I asked the players, you know, what's your thoughts on Muschamp? You know, do you worry about him not being the guy moving forward if you guys lose this week? And every player came out and they said, he's the right guy. He's the right guy for this reason, that reason. You know, they love him because he's a player's coach. They love him because he's able to develop them and get them ready for the NFL. All those things sound great. And I know we've had this conversation off here before, and I'm sure people would agree with that. No one's disagreeing with that, but they want to see the results here. And I think the unfortunate part is this. As great as that run was with Steve Spurrier during that, you know, 2009, 2013 window, I could be off a year or two.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But my point being is, as great as that was, it brought the expectations up to a level that we've never seen here with USC football. I mean, yes, you can go back to the Black Magic year. Yes, you can go back and pick out seasons here and there. But for the most part, USC football has just always been mediocre. That's just the bottom line. Does that mean they should settle on that? Absolutely not, because they have the ability, especially being down here in the SEC, to be able to get the talent to be able to do this year after year, to be able to compete for at least an SEC East title. I think the part about what Muschamp has to do this year is, you know, if there is a full schedule, you need to be able to at least get 7 wins. You need to be able to get to a bowl game, if there are even bowl games. And you need to be able to show that you have made progress on the offensive side of the football, because defense, I feel like defense is going to be all right. I feel like they have the talent. Yes, they're losing Kinlaw up front, and not having a guy like that from a pass rusher standpoint and want him can sometimes expose defensive backs a little bit, even though the defensive backs we have here, or I should say that USC has here, are incredible. You need to be able to put some pressure on the quarterback. Offensively, I don't know. Helinski's going into year 2, so there's no rookie excuses that you can use anymore if he is the guy. And you have Mike Bobo coming in, who's arguably probably one of the best offensive coordinators you could have got this offseason. So if you can't do it this year, I don't know when you're going to be able to. So there's no question about it that Muschamp's back is against the wall. But I truly believe they're going to show progress this year. even through a difficult schedule. And it's going to be difficult every year. That's what George Rogers said last year. I said, what do you think about that? He started laughing. He's like, it's the SEC. It's the SEC. And I guess, you could do the nitpick and saying, all right, well, they didn't play LSU and Alabama these last couple of years. It happens. It's going to be the rotating schedule, which I still don't understand how you play Alabama once every 5 years sometimes. But my point being is this has to be the year that Muschamp shows improvement with this program, because if not, I mean, you got Bob Caslin in there. I don't know how much longer he's going to sit back, especially when you have a team in your state, your rival, that has been doing so well. That's the other point too. If Clemson wasn't playing as well, would people be as upset with Muschamp? I feel like people still would be upset, but I don't know if it would be the same level, because I think it bothers people. It bothers Gamecock fans seeing how well Clemson does, and they want to be able to keep up with that, and they have no argument for me here saying that that's not something that should be done.
Yeah, I think, Mike, you bring up a great point there, and something I was going to mention is that I think it's definitely made Will Muschamp's life and job a lot harder with the success Clemson's having, and Georgia too, but mainly Clemson. And I think you're right. I think it bothers Gamecock fans to the core, especially when you come off of dominating them for 5 years in a row. And I think a lot of Gamecock fans are salty in the sense that should be us. Like, that's the trajectory South Carolina was headed down, and it fell apart, versus Clemson lost that 5 in a row, and they found a way to turn it around. Now they've won 6 in a row. So I definitely think and agree with you that, that's why, listen, when I was coming up as a Gamecock fan, it really clicked for me when I was, say, 12 years old. So around 2002, 2003, I always knew, and it still blows my mind to this day, Mike, just coming from the South Carolina fan perspective. I always knew Clemson as a 6-win, 7-win program, like pretty much on equal footing as South Carolina. And it was like, sometimes Clemson beat South Carolina, and more often than not, actually, but sometimes South Carolina beat Clemson. But like you said, it makes it a much tougher pill to swallow when South Carolina's fighting for 6 wins, 7 wins, really just fighting to be relevant in college football again on the national scale, versus Clemson, top 5 team, top 2 team in the country, going to national championships. There's just such a, the levels, as far as the level Clemson's on versus the level South Carolina is on. And again, as a Gamecock fan, it hurts to admit this, but it's the truth. The levels they're on are just completely astronomically different, not even in the same universe right now. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a huge reason that Muschamp – it's one of the biggest reasons, I think, that Muschamp has caught such heat for sure.
Yeah, and I think, like I said before, at some point you got to decide, are we going to be a team that's going to be mediocre? Are we going to be a team that we have confidence in this coach? Because I know we talked about this before, and some Gamecock fans are going to get upset that I'm comparing them to them. Mark Stoops and what he's been able to do at Kentucky. Because those first couple of seasons, Stoops was in a similar situation. They really weren't able to turn the page. So, I've gone through it before as a former player. I don't like saying as the former player stuff. Especially playing D2, it's like, that's nothing like the SEC. But my point being is there does take time to be able to adjust when you bring a new coach in. And my question to you was, because I know we've had this conversation, if USC were to get rid of Muschamp, and obviously timing comes down to it, you don't know what could happen in the offseason. I just don't know who the best fit is out there. I really don't. But at some point, though, change isn't a bad thing. Sometimes you need that change of voice. I mean, we saw it in other sports. You see with the Red Sox. I mean, you had Terry Francona, one of the best managers in baseball, won a World Series with the Red Sox. And what did they do? They had to get rid of him. Why? Because they just needed a new voice in that locker room. So I don't think it's time to move on from Muschamp quite yet. I am confident that he's going to be able to take it to the next level this year, especially with Mike Bobo at the helm at offensive coordinator. I'm very interested to see just how the offense is going to look this year, because it just seems like, going back from the Kurt Roper days, it seems like it's kind of just been musical chairs. It's like, all right, we're going to do this one year. We're going to do the tempo offense this year. It's just like, I don't even know what the identity of this offense is. I think that's the thing when you talk about, it's so cliche to say about identity, about an offense. USC these last couple of years, I don't know what their identity has been. Yeah. I mean, we could get into week 6, week 7, week 8, and you have no idea what they are, because it still feels like they're trying to figure things out. And I think a lot of that has to do with the injuries. So, if they can stay healthy this year, and I know it's a big if, but if they can stay healthy this year, there's no reason why they shouldn't have at least 7 wins. I don't care what the schedule says. They have the talent to be able to do that.